Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Damn, I don't know what Tim Horton's corporate policy is on workplace safety, but after the manager berated our OP for going to the hospital, she probably should have called a hotline or something, because damn, manager should have been fired, not demoted. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Oh, you're mad at me? Yeah, watch me light this place on fire. I worked for Tim Hortons about 10 years ago. I was a good worker, worked 6 days a week, 10-hour shifts most of the time. I always came in if people called in sick. I even worked in a trailer when they renovated the store, which was illegal because we didn't even have a bathroom. I was good at the sandwich counter and was basically stuck there because no one else was fast enough, or they would just go slow because then they wouldn't get put on the hardest job in the place. After not calling in sick for over a year, I had a night where my 2-year-old daughter was up sick and I literally didn't sleep at all. Instead of calling in, I decided I'd go in and ask if maybe I could do counter or runner for drive-through, pretty easy positions. I asked my manager, told her why, and she said no, that she didn't have anyone else to fill my position, which was a effing lie. Once a few more team members came in, I asked again if I could be switched off of sandwiches because I was exhausted and I'm always on sandwich station. And I met with no. So I decided, F it. Whatever, I'll just work at my own pace so I don't faint on the floor. Well, that didn't go over well at all. I can see my manager losing her crap slowly over time as their drive-through times are terrible because I'm not pushing out bagels every 14 seconds. She then comes up to me and says, go on break, and after that, you're going to Whitby. I'm like, going to Whitby? Why? Manager, well, if you're going to mope around here, then you can go to Whitby. They need people over there. Now, this is where I get pissed off. I first of all was told that I can't leave sandwich counter because there's no one to fill my position, but magically I can totally leave the store? Secondly, I hated having to leave because they don't pay you for your gas. I don't have business insurance on my car. If anything happens while traveling, my insurance won't cover it. And thirdly, because my manager was being a C-word to me even though I always had their back and worked way too hard for minimum wage. I said to her, okay, if you cover my gas expense to get there. Manager, we give 10 points out instead of gas money. Of course you do. So I decided, whatever, I'll go. At least I'll be off of sandwich counter. I go and take my 15-minute break and then come back in, get my stuff, and hop in my car. I then proceed to drive to another Tim Hortons and grab a coffee. Since I'm driving, I need coffee. Then go to my house to check my daughter and make sure she's okay. Then I turn my tunes up and drive leisurely to the other store. I get there and they put me as the runner for drive-thru. That's cool. I was working away and one of the dark roast pots says it's done, but the filter's full of water, so I assume it still needs to drain. Then after 5 minutes, I grab it so I can throw out the filter in hot water, and coffee grinds go all over my hand. Turns out the machine was clogged and my hand was burning to crap. Funny enough, I work with a cold cloth on my hand the rest of my shift. The minute I walk outside, Canada winter, my hand is effing burning, so I call my boyfriend and ask if my daughter's still sick since I have to go to the hospital for a burn. She's fine. I go to the hospital. The doctor puts some black silver crap on, says to keep it clean, away from water and heat, etc., asks if this happened in a workplace, and I said yes. Fill out some forms, and off I go. The next day, I show up and my manager pulls me into her office, yells at me about the fact that I should have come to the store first before going to the hospital because insurance papers, blah, blah, blah. I know these forms, and basically it's just a form taking responsibility for your injury so their WSIB premiums don't go up. I refuse to sign them because F that, it was their broken machine that burned my hand. So now my manager's about to murder me, and I'm about to walk out of her office when I say, oh, by the way, I can't work on sandwiches since I'm on modified duty due to the burn on my hand. Malicious compliance. After a few days, I ended up back on sandwich counter, and I end up with an angry customer. The customer's asking for a breakfast sandwich on a toasted croissant. I let them know we cannot toast croissants because they go on fire. The customer asks to speak to the manager, and I go back to sandwich counter. Next thing I know, my manager comes up to me and starts yelling at me about not making the order, which I reminded her that when she trained me, we were not allowed to toast croissants as that was a fire hazard. She tells me to stop acting like a smart butt and to make the breakfast sandwich with a toasted croissant. All right then. These toasters are like a belt, and you put the item on it, and it goes through the belt and falls into a tray at the bottom. Well, you put a buttery effing croissant, and it turns into Inferno Toaster. I'm standing there watching this croissant catch fire, and just like, oh crap, would you look at that? Fire. Who would have thought? By this point, my manager's putting the belt as fast as it can go, throwing bagels and English muffins into the toaster to get this melted, burning croissant unstuck, poking it with a wooden spoon, and I'm just laughing as the black smoke comes pouring out of the toaster. My district manager was also working that day and starts asking me why on earth I thought it was a good idea to put a butter croissant into the toaster, which I responded, I don't know why manager thought it would be a good idea to put a croissant in the toaster. That manager was demoted to supervisor and sent to another store. I went to college so I would never have to deal with that kind of bullcrap again. Well, that was a hell of a story. This kind of bullcrap happens at minimum wage jobs all the time. The burning croissant was hilarious. And our second story.
Lightning strikes. This occurred in an auto body / mechanic / towing shop. Owner got a call about a tractor-trailer combo that tried to turn around in a schoolyard and busted the trailer hitch. Owner brought the trailer back to the shop and found the parts. It was an old army hitch, and finding the parts took 2 trips to town, 40 miles away. Repairs took the best part of 2 days. The company was based out of Colorado, aka Not So Nice Western Lumber Company, and when the owner finished the repairs and called the lumber company, the boss said, "Just bill us and we'll send you a check." 2 weeks later, owner got a check for 1/2 of the billing marked paid in full. 3 years later, in winter, owner heard a bang out on the highway and a tractor-trailer unit coasted to a stop into owner's parking lot. The name on the door, Not So Nice Western Lumber out of Colorado. The driver couldn't understand it. The engine was running, kinda, but it wouldn't pull. Owner finally found out the crankshaft had broken right in the main bearing between the 3 and 4 cylinder. The front half was running, but not the back. Owner pulled the tractor into the shop and let the driver stay there in the sleeper cab while the company sent out a mechanic. Young guy knew his stuff, pulled the crank, replaced it, and all the bearings, etc. Tractor was ready. Owner was too. Company was called, and the lumber company boss said, "Just bill us." Owner declined, cash up front. The bill was horrendous. Towing, use of shop for 13 days, tools, phone, etc. The lumber company boss asked if this had anything to do with the previous affair. Owner replied, "Of course not." Lots of phone calls between the mechanic and lumber boss company. The trailer, by the way, was parked out front with some 2x8s under the dolly as the ground was wet and soft. The mechanic, laden with instructions and overloading his butt, goes out to the tractor, starts it up, and runs it up under the trailer, but in a hurry forgot to connect the air hoses and set the trailer brakes. He hits the 5th wheel fast and bumps the trailer off the 2x8s and sinks the dolly into the soft ground. Owner parks our big tow truck crossways in front of his tractor. That unit's not going anywhere. Owner looks at the tow truck, pats his .38 in his belt, smiles at the mechanic, and walks inside. Lots of phone calls occur. Cashier's check arrives.
And our last story. Entitled Neighbor from Hell. This is the story of my entitled neighbor, Bob. We live in a HOA. I know. Bob lives across the green space from us. Bob's entitlement was evident almost from the moment we moved in. About a month after we moved in, the police, sheriff, and DEA came knocking at our door. Bob had called them and told them we had lawn bags full of something illegal in our garage. Well, I gave the cops the grand tour of our home, and there was nothing here at all. They apologized for the intrusion and left. Our landlord knew he was lying because the landlord had just been here. Bob was trying to get us out of the neighborhood because he can't have that crap in his neighborhood. He gave up on that when my daughter and her husband purchased the property. Then he started with the constant complaints and demands. We weren't allowed to feed the squirrels because it made a mess. We couldn't plant clover because it might get in his yard. We had to mow more frequently because he mows twice a week. We only mowed once and it looked bad. The list goes on and on. He mows the green space between our houses every time he mows his lawn, killing all the wildflowers, and tells people they can't walk there because he mows it so it's his. The worst of his entitled behavior started 2 years ago. He decided he was going to stop using his furnace and burn wood instead. Now I have lung cancer and my next door neighbor has COPD, so this was really bad. In January 2022, we had a stagnant air warning, which means you can only use wood stoves or fireplaces if that's your only source of heat. Bob didn't care, and the thick smoke from his wood stove blanketed the neighborhood. One morning, I woke up unable to breathe. My daughter called for an ambulance. I stopped breathing and had to be intubated. I spent 6 days in a medically induced coma and another week in the hospital. My kids tried talking to him. I tried reasoning with him, but he didn't care. He said he was allowed to heat his house any way he saw fit. We called the county. They told him his wood stove was outdated and needed to be replaced. He said he'd replace it, but 2 years on, it still hasn't happened. The final straw for me was when another neighbor and I had an argument. It was all of 2 minutes and resolved the next day. He came over screaming at me because he was not putting up with the crap in his neighborhood. He then screamed at me that it was not fair that I got disability, cancer, and he had to work all day. A month later, he was suddenly in too much pain to work. He went on disability from his job, spending his time climbing on his roof, working on his motorcycle, mowing his yard every other day, and generally just enjoying not having to work. Someone he worked with turned him in for fraud, and we had investigators out here taking pictures of his activities around his house. I made sure to have a chat with them myself. Update. I spoke to a couple of our other neighbors. I got an answer on what happened with his disability. His disability was cut off. They said he could appeal, but he'd be charged with fraud and have to pay back every penny he already received and pay a fine plus court costs if he was found guilty. What an a-hole. Those kind of people who feel they're the only ones entitled to live how they please? And what's with that my neighborhood? I hope he really is getting what he deserves, not only for fraud, but for causing trouble and unnecessary health issues to you. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.